My name is Zachary Venegas. I am the founder, chairman, and chief executive officer of Helix TCS. I come from a military family. My grandfather and father served in the U.S. military. I went to West Point. I served as an infantry officer, and after leaving the Army, went to NYU to get my MBA. I went to JP Morgan, both as an intern and then as a full-time banker in Switzerland, covering the Middle East. And after a few years there, after having lived in Bahrain and England and Dubai, I decided to leave JP Morgan and start my own firm, which was called Scimitar, and it was a frontier market-focused private equity firm. So a frontier market, as we define it, is one that's, number one, capitally impaired. Number two is information tight. And information tight means information is not reliably transmitted into or out of that market. That's a very important distinction that we rely on quite a bit, and then has shifting or opaque legal and operational frameworks. So those three things are how we define a frontier market. So it could be defined geographically, and we realized that the cannabis opportunity was a frontier market, but it was just geographically located primarily within the United States, so we could focus on it, and I didn't have to risk, beheading or amoebic dysentery. So I founded Helix in 2015. We've had the company just about 4 years now, and it's been very exciting. We took it from a private firm to a public company that's the largest and pure play transporter security operation in the industry, the largest compliance software operator in the industry with the largest overall market share, and we have plans to make it even more successful in the future. By far, the greatest thing I learned as a military officer and how it helps me as an entrepreneur is the ability to stay focused on a stated objective despite changing circumstances. The environment can come and go. It could be an easy day, probably not, but it doesn't matter. All that counts is achieving the objective. Having a background from the military, especially as an infantryman, where you're almost expected to have it as tough as it's going to be. You're almost expecting that. You're almost wanting that. I think I had that mindset from a very young age because my father was a Marine, my grandfather was in the Army, and so there was that mindset was always around. So we used to say also in the Army, if it ain't raining, we ain't training. Rain while you're training outside is not fun, but the idea was if conditions aren't as difficult as they could be, then it's not real. So although the industry grows in fits and starts, it has not been a smooth rollout from state to state or even country to country. What has grown is the industry itself. And as long as we're going to say that it will be a regulated industry of some sort, which I can't imagine it ever won't be, then us providing critical infrastructure largely focused on compliance and security allows us to grow with the industry overall. We're not terribly concerned about the average price per pound. We're not terribly concerned about legalization in every state because we don't bother with states until they are legalized. We don't enter them. So we're supporting the industry in a legal and compliant way. So we're the most direct way to get that growth without taking a lot of risk on business-specific outcomes. As long as the industry is growing, we're growing.